I'm looking around to make absolutely sure we're quorate. Can I ask the, are we quorate? We are, at 3. Fine, thank you. Got that. And before we go to apologies for absence, we've got here, of course, I'm going to say this. David, is this your last function with the council?
It's, yes, probably my last sort of local area council. Yes, I'll be retiring in three weeks after this week.
Retiring?
Yes.
Wonderful phrase,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And you've been with us, well, since I joined the council. I think you've been here long. Can you tell me how long?
32 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's an impressive role. And I have to say, responsible for the highest quality reports that we get in front of us.
Well,
and I've said this before, and I'll say it
it's
again.
probably Alex and John
I know,
who
but
are more
Alex has got a
responsible.
road, he's got to carry on. But honestly, these are as good as we ever see on the council. So can I say, enjoy your retirement and well done over 32 years.
Thank you very much.
And I think John McKellen's going as well, isn't he?
John is going as well, yes.
Oh, you're dragging him with you? No?
Yeah, we work as a team.
Yes.
So how am I still here?
You're still, yeah. Yes, you're not going out. Right, item 1, thank you. Apologies for absence. Have we any apologies?
Mark. Me.
Mark, yes, I do recall Mark had difficulties. Mark made apologies for absence. Cutting hair again.
Fixing the machine that's supposed to be cutting here, I think.
Ah, okay, that's the same difference. No more. Disclosure of members' interests. Are there any disclosure of members' interests? That sounds like a no.
Chair, there's just the minutes.
Have I missed them? Well, see, yes, as well, I've got you on my left-hand side. Item 2, I apologise, I've jumped too quickly past the minutes of the Rights of Way Committee held on the 8th of July, circulated, confirmed by a true record. Are they agreed as a true record? Is that agreed? Yes, Martin, thank you. That's agreed. Here comes Councillor Renner Thompson just in time. Hello. And here comes Councillor Seymour also in time. We'll not mark you as partly absent. Do take a seat. Wherever you wish. Well. I'm afraid. Head girl. Take a seat. I've got as far as disclosure of interests. Are there any disclosures of interests from the two members? None. Thank you. Well, we'll give you 2 minutes. Military precision here. Thank you. We're now moving on to item 4, which is the review of the definitive map and statement of public rights of way, the alleged byways open to all traffic, numbers 35 and 22, parishes of Harbottle and Netherton. And I move to David. Are you going to take this one forward?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, alleged byways open to all traffic, numbers 35 and 22, parishes of Harbottle and Netherton. You'll see the route on page 16 from points H, J to K. And I'll ask Alex to just run through the slides, which shows you what the route looks like. Starting from point H, Alex?
K.
Starting from point K, running in a southerly direction.
Right.
So southwesterly. Right, okay.
Yep.
So this is a continuation of the officer-generated work to make sure that the definitive map and statement is correct and up to date. This route was subject to consultation with landowners and the user groups, and you'll see the landowner evidence just providing evidence about the route and the use that the route has been put to, and also evidence from user groups about the route that they have used or know about. A copy of this draft report was subject to consultation too with landowners, and no additional comments have been received from the landowners. In terms of the route of alleged byways open to all traffic, numbers 35 and 22, is identified on the County Council's list of streets as being the U4029 road. The route was identified on the Council's 1951 and 1964 highways maps and on the 1958, 64 and 74 county road schedules. There was no 1932 handover map or schedules produced under the restriction of Ribbon Development Act 1935. None of those appear to have survived. The route has been consistently identified as a mainly unenclosed road and track on Ordnance Survey maps since 1866, and it's also shown on Friars and Greenwood's county maps of 1820 and 1828, and also on Carey's map of 1827. It's the officer's view that the documentary evidence that exists does reasonably allege that a public right-of-way exists over this route. In terms of when we look at what the status of the route is, the recommendation in the report is that the route should be recorded as a byway open to all traffic. In terms of that, we have to first look at the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act 2006 to see what impact that act had on extinguishing any vehicular rights that may have existed over these historical routes. And in terms of that act, the saving provision for this route is the fact that the route is currently recorded on the Council's list of streets as the U4029 road. So that does mean that any vehicular rights for motor vehicles that exist on the route were not extinguished through that act. The next thing to consider is whether the route has the appearance to actually be recorded as a byway open to all traffic on the definitive map and statement. For it to be recorded as such, it has to be a public motor vehicle right-of-way, but one which is nevertheless used or likely to be used by the public, mainly for the reasons for which a footpath or a bridleway is used. In terms of looking at the pictures of the route, you can see that for predominant length of the route, that it is much more similar to what we would see as being a bridleway or a footpath. And some of the evidence that came back from the landowners gives some indication of the use to which the route is put at the moment, which is predominantly by non-motorised users. So on that basis, the recommendation before you is that there is sufficient evidence to indicate that public vehicular rights have been reasonably alleged to exist over the route KJ to H, that the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act has not extinguished the public's motorised vehicular rights over the route, and therefore that we should make a modification order to include the route as a byway open to all traffic on the definitive map. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, David. I'll ask a question. Can I ask one myself, first of all? You're saying, in terms of a boat, byway open to all traffic, that this would be public vehicles. In what category do we class tractors from farm holdings, etc.? Is that not in the same category?
I mean, obviously, a tractor or a farm vehicle can use the ordinary road network. The ordinary or a highway could use this as a public right. What you will find is that tractors of the landowner or of the occupiers of the land with their own vehicles will also have private rights to use the land at general or the route itself
Even if it's not a boat?
even if it's not a boat, yeah.
Thank you, that's
Yeah,
clear.
yeah.
Any other questions from members, please? Or points to make? I think, therefore, we need to move the recommendation. Is it recommended that, I'm sorry about the noise outside, we had this morning. Nothing we can do about it, I'm afraid. Can we have a recommendation?
Accept the officer's concerns.
Is that seconded? Thank you, Martin. And those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Well, that was commendably brisk. No difficulties with that one. We'll now move on to item 5, which is the alleged byways open to all traffic, numbers 37 and 12, parishes of Heppel and Slitter, pages 41 to 76. David?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Again, the plan of the route is on page 55 of your reports. And I'm going to say that the slides that you will see go from SRQP, and Alex will now tell me it's the other way around. East, oh, I didn't see that bit. East to west.
East to west.
Right, so it's from SRQ to P.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is.
got that right. Yes, thank you, Alex. So yes, this route, again, you'll see in the report the landowner evidence from 2018 from Mr. Scott of Low Barton Farm, which just indicated the area that he owned. A copy of this report has been out to the landowner again, and no additional comments have been received. There is also some commentary there within the report from user groups giving their views on the use of the route by members of the public. In terms of the documentary evidence which supports the recommendation, the route has been consistently identified on Ordnance Survey maps since 1866. The P to Q Heppel part has always been shown as unenclosed, whilst the Q to S Snitter part has always been depicted as an enclosed route. The route would appear to be shown on Friars and Greenwood's county maps of 1820 and 1828, and also on Carey's map of 1827. On the plans produced in association with the Finance Act 1910, the enclosed Q2S section of the route was shown as being separated from the surrounding land by coloured boundaries. And this is generally a good indicator of supporting evidence that the route was also considered to be a vehicular highway. If we then turn our attention to the impact of the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act, it's the same as the previous report in that this route, I've actually missed that section, haven't I? Sorry, if I just go back. The route is identified on the Council's list of streets as being part of the U4025 road. So it's on the 51 and 64 highways maps, and also on the 1958, 64 and 1974 county road schedules. So in terms of the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act, we need to turn our attention to whether the public motor vehicular rights have been extinguished by that act, and the fact that this route is on the list of streets does mean that those rights were not extinguished and have been saved. So there is alleged to be a public right-of-way for motor vehicles still in place. In terms of recording it on the definitive map and statement, again, we are looking to the character and use of the route, This is a route that should be open to vehicular traffic, but one which is predominantly used in a similar manner to which footpaths and bridleways are used. Again, you can see from the photographs the character of the route. The part of the route that serves premises obviously is not dissimilar to the ordinary road network in parts, but the vast majority of the route is more similar to what we would see as a bridleway or a footpath. In addition, we are aware that the route does form part of the Sandstone Way, which is a promoted long-distance route for mountain bikes, and that is estimated to have between 2,000 and 3,000 users a year. And some of the comments contained in the report do indicate that the predominant use is by horse riders, cyclists and walkers. I would also say that on Friday I will be mountain biking the route as well with two friends, so that can add to the user evidence. Yeah, I know. So the recommendation before you is to agree that there is sufficient evidence to indicate that public vehicular rights have been reasonably alleged to exist over the SQ to P section of the route, that the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act does not appear to have extinguished the public's motorised vehicular rights over that section, and that we do make an order to include the route as a byway open to all traffic on the definitive map and statement. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any questions or points being made by members? Councillor Swinburne.
Yes, well, it's my general question and a specific question, but is there some of the route obviously is fenced on both sides and some isn't? Can you explain what the sort of significance is when you consider it?
In terms of significance, in terms of the way it's used, or?
Well, in terms of, obviously, we're looking to potentially classify it as a byway up to all traffic.
Yeah.
Is it specific with regard to that as opposed to a footpath or a bridleway, or in terms of evidence of what we're looking at?
Well, the evidence that you're looking at is supportive of the route being a byway open to all traffic, and that's based on the historical map evidence, primarily the Greenwood and Fryer maps, which on those maps, which are good at evidence in combination, do depict the routes as carriageways rather than a lower status. So in terms of the report itself, we are only reasonably alleging that it's quite a low-level test. Obviously, once we make an order can only be confirmed on the balance of probability, and that would either be done by ourselves if no objections were received to the order as made, or by the Secretary of State if we did receive objections to the order, and an objection may be that it shouldn't be recorded at that status but should be recorded as a lower status. But the actual sort of whether a route is enclosed or unenclosed, that just comes down really to either historical or modern land practice. Obviously a lot of land was unenclosed in the sort of the 16th, 17th, 18th century, and then during the sort of 18th, 19th centuries, huge swathes of land in the country became enclosed through the sort of enclosure awards and acts. But some areas of open land remained as common land and was more open and never did get fenced off. I don't know about this. I mean, this seems to me, sections that I've ridden, it always seems as if it was enclosed with...
Yeah, I mean, it could just be a privately arranged
thing, yeah.
Stuff there.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, as David says, you have, just because something is enclosed doesn't mean it's necessarily public.
The microphone.
Oh,
Oh, it's on.
is it on?
Yeah. His microphone is on.
Yes, he switched it on from the office.
Oh, right.
So it could just as easily be public. You can't assume just because it's enclosed that it's public. Equally, just because it's unenclosed, it might be public, it might be private. That doesn't really help us a huge degree. I suppose the main significance really is to the width of the highway because if it's enclosed, the presumption would normally be, in the absence of any evidence to the contrary, that the highway will run from boundary to boundary. So that's why for these parts of it we're identifying a width which is sort of, I think, somewhere between 30 and 40 feet generally. And then when you get to the unenclosed sections, we don't have that width information to work from, so that we revert in those instances to our default width of effectively 5 metres, which is significantly less than that, and some people complain that that's not really very much, and then landowners will often indicate that's too much, and it's striking a balance, but it's wide enough for 2 vehicles effectively travelling in opposite directions to pass. So that's been our default for a number of years now, and inspectors, when they've considered our orders that have had objections, have generally seemed satisfied with that working hypothesis that 5 metres is a reasonable width to go with.
I mean, that slide in itself gives a very good indication as to why this may be a carriageway. You can actually see the way there's a sort of the ditch down to one side that probably was or is on the other side, and you have got that sort of width there of a carriageway width, a bit like just the ordinary roads that you drive down, where you'll see the surface carriageway, a bit of verge, and then hedges or trees. Very, very similar.
Yes, it's interesting because I know this is part of the Northumberland TT course for motorcyclists. As you
Oh,
come
right, is it?
Going
Yeah.
over Heppel, over the bridge, there's a sharp right turn which would take you towards Elsdon. But
Yeah.
to the left, I've often wondered where that road went, and that's obviously part of the cycleway.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
appreciate that. You know, you learn a lot from this, but it is. So that clearly it's linked to an existing carriageway very directly. So that's quite fascinating. Sorry, thank you.
I mean, this one, sorry to interrupt, this one you can sort of see this is going across the open bit, but the road disappearing off the hill in the distance is a tarmac road, so this has appeared to me to be a sort of a continuation of that, whereas the tarmac road there goes off and this one isn't tarmac.
Good. Are there any other points or questions to make?
Just,
Yes, Catherine. Councillor Seymour.
just interested in really the Sandstone Way mountain bike trail. I didn't realise it ran through there from Berwick to Hexham. Is it sort of straight or is it hilly or is it a bit of both?
I've ridden it in 2 days with a total of 16 and a half hours riding time, and it's very hard.
I bet it is.
Yeah,
Very hard.
very hard.
Right.
Don't bother.
Okay.
It's very good.
It's good though.
Yeah,
Good
it's
exercise.
like anything in the countryside. It depends on the weather, time of year. And do it at your own speed. You know. No, it's a cracking route. Yeah.
There you are. Therefore, can we have a recommendation, please?
None.
That's
Yeah, I'm happy to recommend
that's
the
recommended by
officers.
Councillor Seymour. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Hardy. And those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Excellent. You learn something every day. Right, we go back now to item 6. It is the alleged byway open to all traffic, number 38, in the parish of Heppel, pages 77. David.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Again, a plan of the route is on page 92 of your report. And the route, we'll see some slides going from south to north, from point V up to W on your plan. You'll see that on the plan on page 92, we've got W and then X to Y. The W, X to Y section was dealt with as part of another application. It would just so happen that we were consulting on this at the time we received an application. So we are only, for today's purposes, considering the section V to W. Thank you, Alex.
Yep.
That's probably it, yeah.
that it? Yeah, thank you, Alex. Yeah, so again, in the report, you can see we carried out consultation with the landowners back in 2018, and there's correspondence there from two of the landowners about their ownership of the land, and also their thoughts on what uses the route is put to by members of the public. Also, we carried out the consultation with the user groups. There's a short section there on page 84. In terms of the recommendation before you, the documentary evidence that we've looked at to support that recommendation is that the route is identified currently on the council's list of streets as being the U4057 road. The route was also identified on the council's 1951 and 64 highways maps, and also on the 58, 64 and 1974 county road schedules. There's no 1932 handover maps or maps and schedules produced under the Restriction of Ribbon Development Act 1935. In terms of Ordnance Survey maps, it's been consistently identified on all the editions of maps since 1866. And the route is also depicted on Armstrong's, Friars and Greenwood's county maps of 1769, 1820 and 1828, and also on Carey's map of 1827. The route was not shown as being separated from the surrounding land by coloured boundaries on the plans produced in association with the Finance Act, but that's not unusual since this route was not an enclosed one at that time, so it didn't appear as if it was a separate carriageway within the land holding. In terms of the status of the route, we're recommending that it is recorded as a byway open to all traffic. In terms of the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act, similar to the previous reports, the fact that this is recorded on the council's list of streets is a saving provision, so the public's motor vehicular rights have not been extinguished over this route. And again, the test for whether it should be included on the definitive map as a byway open to all traffic, we're looking at the use and the character of the route. And once again, as you can see, the vast majority of this route is of a character and condition which is more in accord with routes that would be used as bridleways and footpaths are used, rather than ordinary motor vehicles. And also there's quite a sufficient amount of evidence in the report which shows that the local landowners are aware that the predominant use is by non-motorised recreational users. So if I turn my attention to the recommendation, we are saying that there is sufficient evidence to indicate that public vehicular rights have been reasonably alleged to exist over the VW section of the route. The Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act has not extinguished any public motorised vehicular rights over the route, and that we do include it in a future definitive map modification order as a byway open to all traffic. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David. Are there any points or questions from members, please? Councillor Swinburne.
Can I just ask what the status then is of the Y to W section?
Yes, the Y to W section is that continues from W in an easterly direction along the track that is marked on your map there. We received an application from a member of the public for that route. That was back in, I don't know when the application was received. Was it about 2016, 17?
It
and
would
then
have actually been just after my consultation.
was it? Just
so my
after?
consultation was 2018, so I think it was literally the
Oh,
same
it was
year,
straight
but
after, yeah. So we received an application from a member of the public for that section and a longer section. which was dealt with separately. We brought a report to committee on that one, and the recommendation in that report, I think the application was for it to be a bridleway, and what we did was members agreed to make an order to record the route as a restricted byway on the basis of the evidence. An order was made. No objections were received to that order, so the order was confirmed by the County Council as a restricted byway rather than a byway open to all traffic. What that does mean is that when this route is recorded as a byway open to all traffic, it will in effect be a cul-de-sac route for motor vehicles, and there would not be a right of way for the public in a motor vehicle through onto that section.
Thank you. Okay, any other points or questions? No, may I have a recommendation?
Recommend that we accept the case provided by the officers, that this is a legal right of way.
Recommendation as shown. Is that seconded? Councillor Anna Thompson. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. I'm doing really well. I should not have said that, because that's what happened now. Item 7. The alleged restricted byway public footpath number 13 in the parish of Snidder. Page 117. Did I get that right? Yes, 117. David.
Yep. 121. No?
Yeah, Councillor Castle seems to have different page numbers.
Oh, do they have differently? It's special page numbering. Yeah. So there's a plan on page 130 of the route. This connects with one of the reports we've considered earlier. So the route on page 130 is from, looking at the slides, will be from point U to T to R. If I could just ask Alex to take us through the slides. All right, thank you, Alex. Yes, this route, when we first set off looking at this route, Alex was consulting on it on the basis that this was public footpath number 44 and 1 in two separate parishes. If you see on page 131 there, you can see the public footpath. And we were consulting to, and having a look at evidence as to why that was a cul-de-sac public footpath. I think the British Horse Society, was it, Susan Rogers, came to Alex, and her view was that there were higher rights over a much longer route on a different alignment to the public footpath. And Alex, obviously, with Susan, looked at the evidence for that. So the report that we're now looking at is wider than what we thought was just an anomaly. In terms of this route, the route of alleged public footpath number 13, it's not identified on the council's current list of streets as being publicly maintainable highway of any description. The route was not identified on the council's 51 or 64 highways maps and does not appear on any of the subsequent county road schedules. The route has been consistently identified on Ordnance Survey maps as a mainly unenclosed road and track since 1865, and is also appears to be depicted on the Greenwoods County map of 1828. And the route appears to have been labelled as a public awarded by road on the plans produced in association with the Finance Act 1910. In terms of the public footpath section and it being a cul-de-sac, When we've looked at that, we've gone back and looked at the definitive map and statement when it was first being put together back in the 1950s. And what appears to be the case is that during that process, the surveyors who were carrying out the work to identify public rights-of-way for inclusion on the definitive map and statement, they actually thought that the public footpath at the northwest end of this route did meet what they considered to be a public highway. So that probably offers some explanation as to why that route at that time got recorded as a cul-de-sac, because the surveyors at the time thought that the road where the public footpath ends at the cul-de-sac was a highway. Obviously, that wasn't the case. We have no indication that it was a recorded highway, and was certainly not one that the Highway Authority had on any of its county road schedules, and has certainly not found its way onto the current records that we have of maintainable highways. But that's probably an explanation for why the public footpath was a cul-de-sac. In terms of turning now our attention to the modern day, we've run through what evidence is there to reasonably allege that the route RT to U is a public vehicular highway. And as with previous reports, we're pointing to very similar evidence, the range of historical maps, Greenwood's map in particular, and also the Finance Act 1910 of being labelled as a public awarded by-road, again gives some additional supporting evidence. So on that basis, we are saying that it's reasonably alleged that there is a public vehicular highway over the route. In terms of the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act 2006, we have to go through a process of considering whether any public motorised vehicular rights that exist on the route, whether those rights have been preserved or whether they've been extinguished. Now, the normal saving provision, and this is in common with the previous reports that we've looked at, is that where a route is on the list of streets, then that is a saving provision for the public's motor vehicular rights. In this case, this route has no recorded status at the present time, either as a public right-of-way on the definitive map or on the council's highway network of maintainable highways. So on that basis, the saving provision on that basis isn't there, and so any public motorised vehicular right that would exist purely on that basis is lost. There are then some other provisions in the Act that can save motor vehicular rights. One of them is where the main lawful use between the years May 2001 and May 2006 was with mechanically propelled vehicles. The difficulty with judging on this one is that we don't have any evidence on which to make a decision on that. It is difficult to demonstrate that public motor vehicular right use would have outweighed any pedestrian, equestrian and cycle use. Looking at the route, I think it's very unlikely that motorised vehicle use would have been the predominant use, so we don't think that is a saving provision. The next one to look at is where the public's motor vehicular rights would not have been extinguished if they were over a way that had been in long use by mechanically propelled vehicles before 1930. Again, we have no evidence of long-standing public motor vehicle use before 1930 in this instance, so again, we wouldn't use that opt-out to extinguishing the rights in the Act. The final one is the public's motor vehicular rights would not be extinguished if they were over a way that had been created by the construction of a road that was intended to be used by mechanically propelled vehicles. And again, we have no evidence that that was the case for this route. So on that basis, in light of the documentary evidence that we have, we are saying that public vehicular rights have been reasonably alleged to exist over the route. However, the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act does appear to have extinguished the public's motorised vehicular rights over the route RTU, and none of those exceptions can be applied to the route. So on that basis, we are saying that the route should be included in a future definitive map modification order, but the class of route should only be as restricted byway. Thank you, Chair.
That's very clear. Thanks very much indeed. Any points, questions from members, please? Yes, Councillor Seymour.
Yeah, just on the, in response to the consultation by the British Horse Society, they said on the 1895 OS second map, the footpath labelled FP, said currently the recorded footpath is a dead end.
Yeah.
Is that still?
Yes, that's what I was referring to, where I said that when the definitive map was being put together in the 1950s, we think that the reason that it was a dead-end route at that northwest end was because the surveyor had assumed that the route that we're now proposing to record was already recorded as a highway.
It wasn't.
Where in actual fact it wasn't. We think that they made an error, and because through the consultation process with the definitive map there were opportunities for that issue to be raised at a later date, but it doesn't appear as if anybody picked up on that through any of the consultation processes, so it just became an anomaly that nobody ever really picked up on. Probably what's happened over time is members of the public have just used the public footpath, and then once they've got to where it cul-de-sacs, I've just carried on and used that track. So there probably is sort of user evidence as well over this route of use over the years. I don't think we're aware of reports over the years, are we, about this route?
I think one of the farmers had indicated that this footpath hasn't been used for quite a while, I think, because people use the route that we're considering in preference. Obviously, when the original route was originally being recorded, the parish had identified footpath 1 as being the footpath because it must have been, well, you assume it was being used at that time, but over time it's fallen into disuse, and the sort of alleged restricted byway stroke footpath route is the one that people favour now.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? May I have a recommendation?
Recommend that the route be recognised as a restricted byway,
As recommended.
as recommended by the officers.
Yes. So the officer recommendations are, is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Swinbank. Those in favour, raise please. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Well, this is always the best illustrated of the council meetings I attend, don't you think?
They're always done on a nice day as well.
I know you shouldn't be here. I know you should be wishing you on your bicycle, but very soon you will. I don't think. Have I missed anything? Hang on. Let's go
You
back.
must be rapidly getting through all these, are you?
No, how could you suggest that that's the case? So that was it, actually. There's no urgent business that was put to me. The next meeting is the 26th of October, Committee Room 1, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, David, for your last meeting.